The US dollar is one of the most powerful currencies ever created. It moves global markets, underpins international trade, and quietly dictates how food, fuel, technology, and debt flow across the planet. Entire economies rely on it without ever touching American soil. So imagine waking up one morning to discover that the dollar no longer works. Not weakened, not declining. Completely collapsed. Overnight, stores close their doors. ATMs run dry. Credit cards stop working. Bank balances still appear on screens unchanged down to the cent, but those numbers have lost all meaning. The money hasn't vanished. It has simply become worthless. What unfolds next isn't just an American crisis, it's a global shockwave that rattles every country tied to the modern financial system. For millions of ordinary people, the day begins like any other. An alarm goes off. Phones light up with notifications. Messages from friends and family stack up faster than they can be read. Mixed in with them are breaking news alerts, flashing the same headline in slightly different wording. The US dollar has crashed in a record-breaking collapse. At first, it doesn't feel real. Bank accounts still show the same balances, paychecks are still scheduled, but as people refresh their screens, reality sinks in. The dollar's value has dropped to effectively zero. Whatever caused it, a catastrophic loss of confidence, a debt crisis spiraling out of control, or a sudden rejection of the dollar by global markets, the result is the same. Money no longer functions as money. Calls flood into banks. Automated messages apologize for unusually high call volumes. Hold times stretch into hours. News footage fills television screens. Grocery stores packed wall to wall with people stripping shelves bare. Arguments breaking out over food and bottled water. Security guards trying and failing to maintain order. In many places, no one can actually buy anything. Cash is refused. Cards are useless. Even digital payment apps have no way to price goods in a currency that no longer exists in any meaningful sense. Across the country, gas stations shut their pumps or demand payment in anything other than dollars. Fuel becomes one of the first commodities to vanish, instantly disrupting transportation, emergency services, and supply chains. Trucks stop running, deliveries stall. Pharmacies begin rationing medication, hospitals switch to emergency protocols. Panic spreads faster than any official explanation. People open their wallets and realize how thin their safety nets really are. A few bills, some coins, all of it symbolic now. The anxiety is physical. Tight chests, shaking hands, the sudden understanding that modern life depends on trust in something abstract. And that trust has just evaporated. This isn't the first time a currency has collapsed. History is littered with examples, and none of them end well. In 1920s Germany, hyperinflation destroyed the value of the mark so thoroughly that people burned stacks of cash for heat because it was cheaper than firewood. In Zimbabwe, the government printed trillion-dollar notes that couldn't buy a loaf of bread. In Venezuela, prices doubled so quickly that wages became meaningless between morning and night. But there is a critical difference here. Those were national collapses. This is the collapse of the world's reserve currency. For decades, the US dollar has been the backbone of global trade. Oil is priced in dollars, international loans are issued in dollars, central banks across the world hold massive dollar reserves, not because they love the United States, but because they trust the currency to retain value. That trust is what makes the system work. And once it's gone, the effects don't stop at US borders. Foreign banks scramble to assess their exposure. Countries holding trillions in US Treasury bonds watch the value of those assets implode. Global markets freeze as traders struggle to reprice everything at once. Commodities, currencies, debt, and derivatives all tied directly or indirectly to the dollar. Factories overseas slow production. Exporters refuse shipments to the United States without alternative payment arrangements. Ports clog with cargo that no one knows how to value. Airlines ground flights as fuel contracts fall apart. Insurance companies suspend coverage. The invisible infrastructure of global finance grinds to a halt. Economists are pulled into emergency meetings before sunrise. The playbooks they've studied are thin. Currency collapses are usually isolated. A collapse of this magnitude is something else entirely. The U.S. has avoided this fate for so long precisely because the dollar has never fully failed. Even after abandoning the gold standard in 1971, the dollar remained dominant due to stability, military power, and the sheer size of the American economy. But those foundations have been under strain for years. National debt has ballooned past $30 trillion. Deficits grow faster than revenues. Interest rate hikes make borrowing more expensive. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Confidence weakens not because of one event, but because of many pressures building at once. If enough investors, governments, and institutions decide that the dollar is no longer safe, the collapse becomes self-fulfilling. Inside government buildings, officials rush between offices, drafting statements meant to reassure a population that no longer believes reassurances. Maintaining order becomes the immediate priority. Economic solutions take time. Order can disappear in hours. Public statements urge calm. Emergency broadcasts promise action, but beneath the language is uncertainty. A government cannot simply declare a currency valuable again. Value depends on acceptance, and acceptance depends on trust. Businesses shut down not out of protest, but out of arithmetic. Paying workers in a valueless currency makes no sense. Charging customers becomes impossible. Payroll systems freeze, rent goes unpaid, mortgages stall, debt contracts written in dollars become legal and economic minefields overnight. Within a single day, the economy resembles something closer to the past than the present. Bartering begins spontaneously. Food is exchanged for batteries, labor is traded for fuel. Neighbors pool resources not out of idealism, but necessity. People with practical skills, mechanics, electricians, plumbers, suddenly find their work more valuable than abstract credentials. Law enforcement struggles to respond. Officers still show up, but supply shortages, unpaid wages, and exhaustion take their toll. Some areas remain calm, others spiral. Curfews are imposed, movement is restricted. The goal is not prosperity, it's preventing total breakdown. Globally, other nations face hard choices. Bailing out the United States would require resources and coordination on a scale never attempted. And even if they wanted to help, how would repayment work? Loans require confidence in the future value of money. That confidence is exactly what's missing. Some countries move quickly to insulate themselves. Trade blocs retreat inward. Alternative currencies and settlement systems are tested under pressure. Gold prices spike. So do commodities with intrinsic value, food, energy, metals. Digital assets surge in some places and collapse in others as governments debate regulation versus survival. The geopolitical consequences are just as severe as the economic ones. The dollar has long been a tool of influence. Sanctions, trade agreements, and financial pressure all rely on dollar dominance. Without it, the United States loses leverage overnight. Power vacuums form, rivals move to fill them. At home, the government considers drastic measures. History offers uncomfortable precedents. During the Great Depression, private gold ownership was outlawed to stabilize the currency. Similar ideas resurface, freezing bank accounts, seizing hard assets, enforcing price controls to prevent hoarding and gouging. Each option carries risks. Each erodes trust further. The hardest truth settles in slowly. This crisis doesn't end quickly. Even if a new currency is introduced or the dollar is restructured, rebuilding trust takes years. Generations remember what it feels like to wake up and discover their money no longer works. For ordinary people, adaptation becomes the only strategy. Communities reorganize. Local systems replace national ones. Value becomes tangible again. Food, water, skills, relationships. The abstract convenience of modern finance gives way to something older, slower, and far more fragile. A dollar collapse wouldn't just change prices, it would change behavior. Consumption drops, long-term planning disappears, survival thinking replaces growth thinking. The economy doesn't just shrink, it rewinds, and the rest of the world watches closely. Because if the most powerful currency in history can fall overnight, then no system is truly permanent. The collapse of the dollar wouldn't be the end of money, but it would mark the end of an era, one built on trust, stability, and the assumption that tomorrow would look a lot like today. When that assumption breaks, everything else follows.